All right, it looks like we're at the hour. Thanks everyone for being here. We're really excited to bring you this topic on mobile security and compliance and this idea of mobile safe harbor for your organization. My name is Q Mangus. I'm a Solution Marketing Manager here at Micro Focus, and we're joined by Paul DePon. He's the founder and CEO of Notify Technology. Just a few things to take note of. This webinar is being recorded, so for those of you who are on this call, you can go back and reference it. Also, if you have any questions, feel free. There's a question panel there in the GoToWebinar UI. Feel free to put those through, and we'll make sure to have time at the end for any questions that you may have. So we'll make sure to go over those. Once again, thanks everyone for being here. We're really excited to bring you this information, and we're really excited to have Paul DePon with us. I'll go ahead and give him some time to introduce himself.
Hugh, thank you very much, and I want to thank everybody for joining our call today. When we came up with the title for the webinar, How to Create a Mobility Safe Harbor for Your Organization, for those people that know safe harbor, the definition of it, safe harbor is a provision in a law or regulation that affords protection from liability or penalty under specific situations or if certain conditions are met. And sometimes safe harbor reduces liability if good faith is demonstrated. So I think what we're going to show you today is, between both of our products will provide you the good faith that may be needed to in that safe harbor definition. So Q, with that, I'll turn it over to you to talk about your unified archiving with Retain.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, we're really excited to bring this information and introduce that concept of that mobility safe harbor and how these solutions can help you with that. Here's a little bit of the agenda. We just touched on that, is what is a safe harbor. We're going to talk about compliance with archiving. We're going to talk about the NotifySAM and the NotifySAM, and then we'll have those questions at the end. I'd like to begin talking about when we're talking about information archiving and mobile compliance and security. I wanted to first touch on some of the top IT concerns, and these are the things that we're going to really touch on today. As you can see, we've got a number of things that you're probably concerned with when it comes to your IT infrastructure. What we're going to focus today on, of course, is your data management, compliance, and e-discovery when it comes to the archiving piece. So there are other things, and what we're talking about with the mobile safe harbor does have to do with these, but today we're going to touch on those items and talk about how Retain helps with that. Some things just to take note of is this was taken by Gartner recently. They found that about 75% of global companies will be involved in legal or regulatory action by the end of the year. So the reason I bring this up is that if you haven't been involved in litigation or regulatory action, you probably will be. And so you need to be prepared for that. And that's where archiving can help you when it comes to your mobile, email, social media communication. Also, your data that is going on in your organization is growing exponentially. It grows about 40 to 6% each year. So just know that your data, you need to be able to manage your data, and that's where archiving can help as well. The other thing when it comes to your data is that your data starts to become old, redundant, outdated, trivial, and even risky. It's a risk that you have to deal with. So about 15 to 60% of your data will of what you have will actually be trivial, redundant, outdated, or risky. So you need to be able to manage that and keep control of that information and that data. So the other thing that I really want to touch on that everyone needs to be aware of is that IT is consumerized, meaning that employees are bringing their own devices. I would imagine you're all dealing with that. And they want to be able to access the network using those devices. So that creates a whole new set of threats. And that's what we're going to address today is Paul, of course, with Notify is going to talk about how you can secure those and help mitigate those risks through the solutions that Notify offers. And I'm going to talk about how you can mitigate the data leakage and mitigate those kind of risks through archiving and having oversight on mobile communication. Of course, here's some more risks. We know that mobile has taken off, that there's, as of last year, there was 1.62 billion mobile devices in the workplace. Think of how many of those there are. And that creates a whole new set of threats. There's devices that were exploited. Most organizations are supporting BYOD. There was some data loss is experienced by employees on unsecured devices. Mobile devices can cause an increase in security incidents. There were devices affected by different threats that are new. So just know that there are things that you need to do to make sure that you can stay secure. One thing also to remember, and here's some stats here, is that a lot of employees are keeping sensitive work on their mobile device. What happens if they lose that? What are you going to do? There are a lot of them are not aware of policies, and then of course employees don't understand permissions. There's a lot of things that can cause you to have concerns and risks in your organization. So how do you solve that? What are you supposed to do? Really what you need to have is there needs to be a mix of policies and technology. You need to have a policy that outlines what is and what is not appropriate. They need to be clear, and there need to be training. So those will help you. If you have a policy, your employees need to know what it is, they need to be clear, and they need to be trained on them. And then of course you need technology to validate that policy. And that's what we're going to touch on today. But just remember, the baseline is you need to have a policy, and then of course you need technology to validate that policy. Now, talking about specific concerns, each type of industry has its own set of concerns. So when it comes to financial services, you need to be concerned about, trade secrets or stock information being leaked. You need to be able to make sure that you maintain records to comply with regulations. Healthcare, you need to make sure to keep it from PHI being leaked. Communications can't contain medical records or payment histories unless it's encrypted. Government needs to be concerned with being able to make sure that you adhere to information requests, that emails aren't deleted before they're archived. And then all enterprises and other industries need to preserve your electronic communication, need to be ready for litigation, and be prepared in case of accusation. So there are concerns that you have, but the overarching concern is that you need to be able to archive, have that information readily available, and produce it if needs be. And of course, there's regulations that touch on that as well. Financial has a number of regulations, the government, healthcare, and then everybody has to comply with the FRCP, or the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. So just be aware. I won't go into each one of these, but just know that these regulations mandate that you keep your information secure, that you have oversight on communication, whether that's email, social media, or mobile, and that you can readily and easily produce that. And that's where Retain comes in. And I like to show this slide because this circle kind of gives you a quick view of what Retain does. Retain is a unified archiving solution, and we use the term unified archiving because we support multiple types of communication, whether that's email, social media, and mobile, and we archive it into one central archive. And from that central archive, you can search, you can perform e-discovery, you can access that data. So some of the things to take note of, I want to touch on each portion of it, and then we'll hit mainly on mobile. So when it comes to email communication, Retain supports Exchange, Office 365, Gmail, Bloomberg Professional, IBM Notes, and of course Micro Focus GroupWise. And all of those are archived into one central archive. You can support one or multiple types of email systems, and that helps you make sure that you once again have oversight on those kind of communications, that you can easily and quickly access it. And Retain supports and has built-in e-discovery and publishing tools, and those tools include redaction and export, and of course you can access that from the Web Access Archive viewer. And then with social media, Retain can actually monitor and archive social media, and this is mainly for the corporate social media accounts, so Pinterest, Flickr, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, Vimeo, and YouTube. All of those platforms are supported and archived in Retain. And Retain works with Archive Social to be able to, alert for keywords, questions, or personal identifiable info. Those can all be, you can get alerts for that. It can be monitored. And then it also is archived into Retain into that same archive with email and mobile communication. Now for mobile, this is what we really want to hit on. You need oversight on mobile communication. If your employees are using mobile for official communication, you need to be able to have oversight on that. You need to be able to archive that. And so Retain supports multiple mobile systems, BlackBerry, Android, and iOS. For BlackBerry, it goes directly to the BlackBerry Enterprise Service and it pulls the messages down from there. It takes those BlackBerry logs and turns them into a format where you can actually use it. So you can have phone call logs, PIN messages, BBM, and text messages all archived in Retain. You can search those. You can perform e-discovery on those and have oversight on BlackBerry calls or BlackBerry data. Then with Android, there's two ways in which we do it. One is we can archive all of the native text messages and phone call logs. So this is very ideal for corporate issued devices. You can archive everything on that device. However, for Android and iOS, we also have this ability to do dual persona. So what you can do is you can deploy an app on the Android or the iOS device, and through that app you can text and call, and there's a separate phone number apart from the native phone number and text messaging that you can do for business communication. And then what Retain does, it integrates directly with that app and it archives text messages and phone call logs directly into Retain. So you can have a dual persona. So if your employees are bringing their own devices, which we know they are, you can let them use the personal side for personal, and you can use the business side using that app for business phone calls and text messages, and then archive them. And of course, all of those communications are encrypted, especially if it's internal. So if I have one person using that app to call and text going to another person using that app, that's all encrypted across the board. Once it hits the mobile carrier, of course, it's not encrypted, but you still have that oversight. And then, of course, as I touched on, no matter what platform it is, there are those included e-discovery tools for regulatory search, for redaction. There's litigation holds. There's permissions so that you can give permissions to different users to be able to access the whole archive, and you can quickly and easily get to archived messages. Here's a view of the Web Access Archive Viewer. This is actually what an end user would see. They can access their own personal archive, and you can see the folder structure is replicated. This is an example of an email archive. And so all the messages are archived there. And then a mobile one would look similar, except it would just be your mobile messages. But a user can do certain things here. They can search their own personal archive. They can restore messages back to an email system. They can forward messages. They can print them, depending on the rights that are given to them. And then, of course, an administrator or other named user can access the entire archive and perform those search functions, the e-discovery, all of that. Here's an example of the search. So this is a powerful, we like to call it a Google-like search. So once again, the power in Retain is that messages are quickly and easily retrievable. You can get to the messages that are archived quickly, and there's actually an auto-suggest of things that are in the archive. The things that you're searching are highlighted. And then, of course, once you create that search and have the search results, you can export them to PDF. You can export them to a standalone archive viewer, and then you can perform redaction of information that doesn't need to be there. So all these tools are there to help you be in compliance and have oversight on communication. Here quickly, here's some of the top ways in which Retain is different from the competition. I'll let you look at that. We kind of touched on a lot of those. One of the things I'll make mention of is that flexible archive access. You can access the archive from that web access archive that I was talking about. There's an offline viewer, and then there's also an email plugin so that your users can access it directly from, say, Outlook or GroupWise. And then one other thing to make mention of here is that there's tagging. So as messages are archived, they can be tagged for further searches. So that's it when it comes to Retain. And the archiving piece, this is, I would encourage every one of you to get your own personal demo or price quote. Visit retainarchiving.com to learn more, to see how exactly this can help you be compliant, because Retain can do it. Retain can archive your mobile communication, and of course it can archive your whole entire electronic communication strategy, meaning no matter what the platform is that you have deployed, Retain can archive it and give you that oversight of those communication. Thanks for your time, and we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Paul, and he will touch on the Notify technologies and how that can help with the mobility safe harbor. But just know the Retain helps you with the compliance on that side of it, archiving your mobile communication, and having oversight. Paul, go ahead.
Hey, thanks everybody. We'll get started. I've got a bunch of material. We'll also make the material available to you, but let's jump right into it. Notify is not a new company. Founded it in '94. We're headquartered in Ohio. We've been in mobility for a long time, about 16 years. But we have 3 products here. We have our Notify MDM product, which has been out since 2011, and today we're going to talk about our Notify SCM product and on the Notify SAM on application management. Let me just let you review some of the terminology here. Mobile devices for us, smartphones and tablets, bring BYOD. These are devices owned by employees, not the corporation. We define data loss prevention as making sure data is secure at rest, in use, and in motion. We define a secure workspace, we're going to talk about it in more detail, is an application that can provide functionality for accessing email, calendar, contacts, internet sites, file stores in a very secure way that handles the data loss prevention. MDM, you've heard, secure, control, manage corporate-owned mobile devices. Sometimes MDM is used for BYOD, but a lot of companies are reluctant to do that. The market, our area has evolved into what we call enterprise mobile management. Here's where we've taken MDM and added functionality to it in content, connectivity, application, expense, and file synchronization. So you've probably seen some of this. Mobile application management's a term, MAM. This deals with how you deal with mobile apps on mobile devices, whether you make them required or recommended, how they're downloaded, where they come from, whether you're going out to the market to get them, or if you provide an enterprise app store. Content management, we're going to talk a little bit about this. We're going to talk a lot about it. We do this by providing what we call a secure workspace. Secure application management, we're going to talk a little bit about this. It's a second new product, and this is where you take an individual application and you basically put security into it to where you don't need to secure the device, you secure the application. A container, you'll hear terminology like container, sandbox. This is the whole concept of encapsulating an application to provide the DLP to that information that's being to the application. Okay, so let's jump into it. Why do you need a secure mobile workspace? Well, first of all, it provides a non-intrusive solution for end users who want to use their own personal mobile devices. I think that's the number one reason why the technology has come about. Number two is it ensures data loss prevention for both corporate data as well as for personally owned devices. It allows you to authenticate the user before they access the information. It also provides jailbreak detection. So if user downloads an application, maybe jailbreaks the device or roots a device, you'd want to be able to maybe have them stop accessing the data. And then, being able to handle the situation where their device is lost. So, we kind of put the attributes together of a mobile workspace. First of all, a lot of you that are dealing with BYOD or don't have formal BYOD, process in place, you may want to deal with BYOD without an MDM solution. So our product, our NotifySAM works standalone. You don't need an MDM with it. It's easy to install and maintain. It does provide all the data security and access. For those of you, I noticed that some of you have compliance and security requirements. Great. If you don't, it doesn't matter. This is still going to give you the peace of mind that individuals using their own device are not going to run away with corporate data or be able to do stuff with corporate data that you don't want them to. And the other thing is by it being standalone, it also saves you time and not having to deal with, installing an MDM solution in order to provide your BYOD. This is kind of a balancing act. You've got your users out there that want to bring their own devices. You have your requirements. It's a balancing act. You want to be able to, give them their privacy. It's their device. They want to be able to feel that you're not being too intrusive on it, but at the same token or same time, you want to provide the security and compliance for your data. We created these scenarios when we're talking to customers. We're trying to fit them into one of these scenarios. I'll go through them real quick. Scenario one, you've got corporate-owned devices. You don't really have much regulatory. Maybe at that point, all you need is an MDM solution. Scenario two, you have corporate-owned devices, and you, let's see here, supports corporate-owned devices and is governed by compliance. Recommendation, you can use both MDM and maybe, secure content management. Scenario number three, you have corporate-owned devices and a BYOD program, so you might split how you manage those. And then scenario four would be you only have a BYOD program. And so if that's the case, then really all you would need would be something like NotifySAM. You would not need an MDM solution in that case. Let's go in here. Okay, so what are the highlights of this? Well, first of all, it can the product can be standalone, or it can be bundled with an MDM, or it can be bundled with, if you already have an MDM solution, it can work with that. We really recommend an on-premise installation because if you look at the information that we're getting at, more than email, it's going to be your intranet, your internal intranet site. It could be file store, things like that. You're going to need to have something on-prem. So we think for the most case, it may be simplest to just install this on-prem. We focus on Android and iOS smartphones and tablets. We do not support Blackberries. If the Blackberry has the Android OS running on it, then we'd support it in that fashion, but the older Blackberries, no. The majority of our customers really are focusing now these days on Android and iOS smartphones and tablets. We do not require active sync for accessing email, calendar, contacts, and tasks. And this is kind of an interesting approach because you can actually shut active sync off, which in a lot of companies we're always worried about it because once you turned it on, everybody had access to it. But we don't use active sync. We actually go into the email and PIM store a little bit different way, and I'll show you that in a second. Target user, definitely BYOD. If you have partners or contractors, you want to give them an email account, let them access some of your intranet sites, or let them have some sorts of access to files, documentation, you might consider that. The other thing is even if you have corporate-owned devices and you have compliance, this is a great way then to layer on another level of security, because really it's with the workspace where you can be able to control the copy-paste. Let's look down here at some of the features here. It does not require VPN. We provide our own connection to the back to corporate, password controlled. All the data in motion at rest is encrypted. We're able to disallow copy-paste. If the device is lost, we can wipe the data The other thing is we can disallow screenshots on Android only. And then the functionality is email, PIM, browser, file access. Those are types of functionality we're talking about. So a quick example here. To the left here, you're looking at email. In the middle here, you're looking at file access. And then here, you're looking at secure browsing. So let's go into this. So what does the architecture look like? Basically, you have one application. In that application, it provides the mail, contacts, calendar, document access, browser. We started working on the messaging. It's not available yet, but it's something that we'll put in later this year. And then if you look on the what's back on the on-premise side, you've got your Active Directory or LDAP directory here for authentication. We do not use Active Sync here. So on the email access, we're using direct APIs into Exchange, Domino, and we're just releasing support for GroupWise next week. It's actually a new release that's coming out. You've also got access to your internet and web apps, and then your document system, whether you're running SharePoint, Windows File Store, we give you access to that. Again, here are the platforms that we support, and again, we do not use Active Sync in order to connect in. So let's look at real quick email and PIM highlights. So you access your corporate email, calendar, contacts. Now, in order to do what we've done, we have provided our own email client inside the workspace. We've tried to make it very similar to the native ones on iOS and Android. It's fairly intuitive to very similar to the native email client. Provide data rest encryption. This is big. The restriction of copy paste. You cannot copy or paste any data outside of the workspace. You can save your email attachment to the file store. We'll support all your email folders, and we badge the number of unread messages. So when you're looking at the icon for mail, you'll see how many unread messages you have. Secure workspace browser highlights. We don't require VPN access to company, though we provide you a secure connection back. A lot of people like that in the sense they don't have to add a VPN capability or expensive VPN capability. They can take advantage of it through the product. The idea of the secure browser allows you to then let your employees have access to the internet sites without opening them up, without creating public access. You create bookmarks to popular websites. If you send a link, a secure link in an email, you click on it, it'll be opened up by the secure browser. And then it provides the auto login to internet sites requiring AD authentication. Kind of a nice feature. On the document access, again, does not require VPN. We provide our own connectivity. Files are downloaded into the workspace. We have the viewers for Office Docs and PDF. We'll support the Windows File Store. We'll support SharePoint version 2013 and later. We also have designed the product to work with content management systems or content management platforms that use CMIS as their interoperability protocol, and we'd have to test those out to see if they do work. And then you can send files as email attachments using the secure mail. So now I'm going to flip into talking a little bit of a different product, and this is where your app's going to take, let me set the stage here for this. Why do you need to secure a mobile app? Well, here's the deal. let's say you've got somebody writing an application for you, a native application, or you even have a web-based application, and you're not sure that it's secure enough. In other words, the application is accessing information in your company. Could be out of the ERP system, could be database, whatever. Maybe that information has to do with products, pricing, financial information, whatever it is. And you're not comfortable that the application that's on the mobile device is secure enough. So we're providing a mechanism for really the developer of that application, but since you're using it, and maybe you've written it, it could be your development team or you've had a third party develop it, something for them to use to provide a layer of security on the application that really will meet any safe harbor for compliance if that's what you're running into, or make you feel good that the app is secure enough to have this kind of data out there. The other thing is that you do not need an MDM solution in order to do this. This is kind of a standalone service or product. Again, it doesn't require MDM. This easy to integrate and use, this would be from the developer standpoint. In other words, you'd have one of your developers use it'll be an SDK to integrate into your native app. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. It'll secure all the data and access to that back end. If you have compliance and security requirements, it'll definitely meet them. It also saves you, we say time and cost only because it's a standalone solution that's just for that app. You don't have to worry about anything else, managing the device or anything. You're kind of managing the app. You're securing the content of the app in an interesting way. And so again, the balance is between the application and the data and the level of security and compliance you need. So it's always a balance. So so how do we do this? Well, again, it's an on-premise solution. It'll provide application security for apps. And will you need this for all of your apps? It just depends on the kind of environment you have. Works for iOS and Android. Once you create the secured app, you can put them out on the Apple or Google's app stores if that's how you want to distribute them, or you can do an internal distribution. We also provide this capability for web-based applications, and I'll show you that in a minute. Simple management console, great for BYOD environments, authenticates using Active Directory or LDAP, and you don't need the MDM solution, and you can provide security policies based on the number of users and groups. And again, for those of you that are interested in either one of the NotifySAM or NotifySAM, we could work with you and go into this stuff more detail, because we only have so much time today, and it's a lot to digest. So, the elements that we're talking about are cryptography, being able to anti-hack and anti-forensic the application, geofencing, data storage encryption, data in transit. This is all the kind of stuff that we're talking about adding to the application that would normally not be done by an app developer. So here's how this works in a kind of very simplistic way. You would take the app that's been written, and you would add our SDK to it, and that would then you would then compile that. And this is going to be more for what the app development team or app developer would do. Compile it, and they would create a secured version of this app. And then you can deploy this. You can put it out on the App Store. You can deploy it with an MDM solution, or we have a vehicle for you to deploy it. We have an app distribution mechanism as part of the product. Same scenario, a little bit less complicated, is where you give us a URL to a web app that you're running inside the company. And what we'll do is we will we call it wrap the web URL. Actually, what happens is we end up taking that URL and injecting it into a secure browser app, and we create this secure app for you. And so basically what happens here is that when you click on this app, it takes you right to wherever the URL is in a very secure way. So just to kind of visualize what I've been saying is that you create the app. We have an app distribution portal. So you download that on your iOS or Android device. You're told, here, go out and get this app. Okay, then it's authenticated. And then from then on, the app is communicating with our gateway, and it is providing a variety of security. Now you'll say, well, what is all that security? Well, let's take a look at some of the stuff that we do here. For example, I have 3 columns. One is with you use the SDK. One is when you do the URL injection, where you take the URL and inject it in the browser. Well, the browser was created with the SDK, so it actually inherits all of the security that you would have. Then we get into binary wrapping, and I don't really spend much time on this one. This is where you don't have access to the source code, and you want to what they call wrap the binary. Problem is you lose some of the functionality. When that happens. This is a technology that's evolving. So we typically like to go back to the people that wrote the app and have them use the SDK or do the URL injection, because it's going to provide a more secure way to deal with DLP. So if you look through this list, and it's kind of extensive, you would not be able to do most of this without taking advantage of the SDK. For example, one of the things we do is we detect that if the device is, you've got an app running on the device, you want to see if the device is jailbroken. If the device gets rooted or jailbroken, we want the app to stop working, but we don't want to tell anybody that. We don't want to show it on the screen so that who's ever tampering with the device or whatever app is rooted it doesn't know that we know. And so it provides a nice way to be able to stop anything from happening if any kind of malware is detected on the device. You're able to, the encryption, we do an encryption of the data on the device that's encrypted over and above what's provided by Apple or Android. Or iOS and Android, and in the data, as the data is transferred back and forth, we actually encrypt the payload. So this provides a really robust level of security. And you get down here, you can see all the different, you get into the usage security, the data protection, leakage. It's pretty extensive. So for those of you that want to sleep good at night, that your app, that the app that's been developed for you is secure and safe, you might consider doing this with the application. And again, the app, if you look at it here, you get here are all your functionality from jailbreak detection, anti-tampering. The other advantage here is that if you have data that you're displaying here, you can't copy paste it out of the app. So it adds this level of security to the application that you're using. And if it's a web app, it provides the same level. So I've kind of gone through this pretty quick. For those of you that are interested, we'll reach out to you. We'll send you the slide deck. And I'm going to turn this back over to Q for any questions that have come up on his side or ours.
Perfect. So it looks like there's one there for you, Paul, and that is FIPS 140-2 compliance.
Mm-hmm. The crypto libs that we use are FIPS 140.2 compliant. FIPS 140-2 compliant. Yes, they are.
Perfect. And then the next one is there an eDirectory integration?
That's a good question. On the group-wise side, I'll have to get back to you on that. I believe so, but I'll have to verify that. I assume that's a group-wise user.
Yeah. Thanks for being here on this webinar. I hope you can see the need to be able to archive and to be able to secure those mobile devices, and how you can do that with the Micro Focus solutions and with Notify solutions as well. I'm going to look really quick to see if there's any other questions. So this is a good one about this is something that I'm just going to ask it, Paul, and then this is something we could definitely answer offline. I'm glad this person has this. It says, as a Micro Focus group-wise user with Guava and Notify MDM, is there any thought to a combined discount?
Of course. We'll always think about that. We'll always try. We'll try.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's awesome. Thank you that you use GroupWise, Guava products, and Notify MDM. That's great to hear. And then another one was just that the new version, looks like the new version of Retain looks really good to them. Awesome. Looks like that's all the questions. Thanks again, everyone. I'm gonna we'll finish up here. And like I said, look for that email with the slides that we went through and the recording. And yeah, thanks everyone for being here and for your time, and thanks especially to Paul for his information.
Thanks, Q. Pleasure.